these empty streets I wend. I've seen a star rise in the east, and I'm looking for a friend. Tooroo-loo-loo-loo-lay, tooroo-loo-loo-lay. Where are you going, good shepherd folk? From a lowly valley we ascend. A wondrous vision sent us here. We're looking for a friend. Tooroo-loo-loo-loo-lay, tooroo-loo-loo-loo-lay. You learned men, where are you going? Our soul's long journey we would end. Therefore we've come to Bethlehem. We're looking for a friend. Tooroo-loo-loo-loo-lay, tooroo-loo-loo-loo-lay. Good people, let me come with you. Perhaps he's just around this bend. But whether near or far, I too have been looking for a friend. Tooroo-loo-loo-loo-lay, tooroo-loo-loo-lay.
It's a joy to share together with you in the holiday season here. I'm reading from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita written by Swami Kriyananda, based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. This week's topic is living in the presence of God. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, we read of a king, capitalized for the references to God, who welcomes certain devotees to the divine consciousness, saying, I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. The elect asked him when it was they had served him in these ways, and the king answered, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. To see God as residing in every human being, as indeed he does, is to open oneself to limitless opportunities for serving him. Paramhansa Yogananda, in Autobiography of a Yogi, described a saint who lived in this consciousness as the greatest man of humility that I ever knew. He described a seemingly chance encounter with this saint. Another day found me walking alone near the Howrah Railroad station. I stood for a moment by a temple, silently criticizing a small group of men with drum and cymbals who were violently reciting a chant. How undevotionally they used the Lord's name in mechanical repetition, I reflected. My gaze was astonished by the rapid approach of Master Mahashaya. Sir, how come you here? The saint, ignoring my question, answered my thought. Isn't it true, little sir, that the beloved's name sounds sweet from all lips, ignorant and wise? He passed his arm around me affectionately. I found myself carried on his magic carpet to the merciful presence. If you would see God, watch for him everywhere. If you would hear his voice, listen for it in all sounds and also in their supporting silences. If you would know God, seek his wisdom behind merely human knowledge. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 6th chapter states, one who beholds my presence everywhere and all things dwelling equally in me, never loses loving sight of me, nor I of him, through all eternity. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
From the Bible that was quoted today. I was hungered and you gave me meat. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. It's right before that is another line that Swami didn't include in this reading. And God is saying to the elect, the ones he's inviting into heaven, come and inherit the kingdom I have prepared for you from the foundation of the world. And I was reminded of this line when Dharmadas, during the purification ceremony, was saying, we're affirming our freedom when we come for the purification ceremony. But we have that freedom always. We just don't realize it. That's why our path is God realization, self-realization, the realization of that freedom, of that kinship with God. So this morning we're just talking about that idea of living always in that consciousness that God is ours. Master said, we are free. And one of the disciples said, but Master, if I just say I'm free, it doesn't mean I'm free, right? And Master said, it's because you doubt. It's because you say, I wouldn't be free. We have to physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually feel that freedom. We have to feel that presence. I've often mentioned this study that I saw. It was made a video of, but it was a scientific study on willpower. And the scientists went into it thinking, well, we have quite a bit of willpower, probably 75% or something. And as they narrowed it down, as they studied willpower, they came to the conclusion that most of what we do is habitual. We just run on rails. We're just have all these mechanisms doing the same thing at the same time of the day, over and over, every day, every day. And what they concluded was that we have one moment of free will, of pure free will, and that's right now. The choice we make right now, right now. That's it. But they add up. They add up, into the habits, into the mechanisms, into what we do all the time. And if we keep making the same choices, guess what? We keep living the same life. But if we make choices to be positive, to be happy, to be serviceful, to not hoard, to keep what is mine for myself. Surely this is wisdom, as the festival says. No, if we give. I read something as I think was a teenager, and it stayed with me. I can't tell you who it came from, but it was the simple advice to give until it hurts a little bit. Because if you just give from the excess of whatever it is, you don't feel anything. But if you give from your heart and give, so it takes a little bit out of you, that's giving. That's why Jesus talked about the widow's mite. You know, she gave her one tiny little coin, the smallest possible thing. But it was a lot to her. And so it meant more to God. Many of us have a very dear friend in Ananda named Uma. And we've been friends for many, many decades. We used to work together for Swami. I remember, she reminded me of this, and I remember that it's true. One day, the three of us, Uma and Swami and me, were sitting. I think I was maybe rubbing his feet or something. I was his assistant. She was his secretary at that time. And we were just, three Taurians. We're Swami, Uma, and me. It's a lot of bull. But we were very, had a fun little dynamic. And I was teasing Uma, saying, Uma, you're such a Pollyanna. You're always so positive, and you're just always make the best of everything. But I was, sort of teasing her about being a Pollyanna. And Swami looked at me and said, you could use more of that. That would be really good. But she's, very high soul, very high soul. And in fact, I saw her palm once, and the headline and the heart line are just one line, and that's a sign of sainthood, actually, or being an animal, but she's definitely on the sainthood side. Anyway, she broke her ankle just a few days ago. She was coming out of her house. She has a wood pile there for a wood stove, and there was a very short but perfectly round piece of wood. And she stepped on it. It was like a roller skate. And when she looked down, her right foot was at a right angle. So she went over and sat down on the step that she had just come down off of. She called two friends who are nurses, who are neighbors. By the time they got there, her foot had straightened out, which seems miraculous, but the nurses said, oh yeah, that happens. So then they took her to the hospital. Well, she was, it was a very busy scene. Even the doctors were saying something astrological must be going on because there are so many accidents, so many things happening. They had 9 available beds. She was the 21st in line. So she probably had to wait for some time in this terrible pain. She didn't mention that to me. We talked on the phone a little bit. And, but she said then they put her in a room with another lady who was dying. This person was dying. and the family was there, and Uma, in her very British way, said it was very poignant. I love that word. It says so much. But so the lady passed away then, and she got another roommate. And the next day, this lady passed away. So she had 2 deaths. She's been there about a week. They were waiting for the swelling to go down in her ankle before they could operate on it. So I think today or tomorrow they'll probably operate. And this was the interesting part. She said, so they're so busy, I'm getting very little attention, and that's okay because I'm fine. I'm sure she's in a lot of pain, but anyway, she said, I spend my time praying for these 2 people who passed away, all their families. She met everybody, just right in the scene. And she's praying for the staff. She's praying for all the suffering people in this hospital. And she said that I feel the light is a conscious force keeping the darkness at bay. And that was so thrilling to me, because that's what we can do. We feel powerless. We feel hopeless sometimes. The political state of the world, all the wars, all the suffering, all the homelessness. I was reading an article in one of the Sacramento newspapers about how the homeless are freezing to death. It's just so cold out there. There's so much suffering, and yet we are not powerless. There's little Uma lying in her bed. She can't even get out of bed at all. And she's spending her time praying and helping and making a difference. And that's what we can do. There was a time many years ago when I was Swami's assistant, and he was a great photographer, as those beautiful prints are a testimony of that we're having in the holiday fair. And he loved taking the impossible shot. So it was springtime, there were beautiful tulips right outside his apartment window. And in the background were the beautiful rolling hills of the canyon coming up from the Yuba River. So that all these blue-green hills, these beautiful tulips in front of them. Glorious shot. So he's in his apartment, and it's lined with windows, and he gets down and takes the shot and dislocates his hip. So he calls out, I'm somewhere, maybe in his office, I come running in. I called Jyotish and Devi, they must have called the ambulance, and they come down. Were you there too? And I remember Devi said, run and get a comb and comb his hair, because the medics are coming. So Swami's just lying on the floor, and he's in terrible, terrible pain. What does he do? He puts out, you could practically visually see it, he puts out this tremendous willpower to be cheerful and friendly and courteous. And he introduces himself to each of the medics, shakes their hand. What's your name? Oh, it's joking around. And he can barely breathe. He's in so much pain, but he has made this tremendous effort to be positive, to live in God's light. to be kind, to be friendly, to be positive. There's another story I'll tell you, but it's just about the choices that we make, the choice right now, to live in the light or to get sucked into darkness. And it's very important. You know, Swami did many lecture tours. It seemed like in the 70s and 80s, it seemed like every time it was called Building Spiritual Power for Troubled Times. It was over and over. We did that subject. And why? Because that's what we need to do. We're practicing now. We're practicing when we feel overwhelmed, where we feel like we just can't go on, like our aura is pressed up against our noses. We have no aura. It's just, we're just exhausted, whatever it is. The frustrations of life, the traffic, the job, the family. It's a wonderful time of year, but can also be very stressful. Can also bring up all the family karma that we've had, that is some of it nice and some of it not so nice. Brings it all up. But we have that choice. We did an astral ascension ceremony for Lon Gluckman, who just passed away recently. And this temple was filled with her family. And a few of us who remember her and love her. But what a beautiful family. Just all of them were like Lon. We met her brother and all of her sisters and her two sons and their families, and just the sweetest people. And one of her daughter-in-laws was saying to me, because I talked about how when Lon went on the pilgrimage with us to the shrines of Yogananda in Southern California, she never complained about anything. She was just always so cheerful, no matter if there was a travel delay or had to walk a long distance, whatever. She just always had such sweet, positive, strong energy. And her daughter-in-law said to me, you know, she never complained. Not even once. Not even one time. And she died of cancer. It was very painful. Never a complaint. So let this be our life. Let us, Ramakant, you can sit there. She's not coming. Or you can sit over there. Let this be what our life is like. No matter what comes, we are even-minded. Since I've talked so much about Swami, I'll tell another story on myself. One day, when I was very new to Ananda, that's my disclaimer, he took me by the shoulders and looked deeply into my eyes and said, even-minded and cheerful. Like, get this through your concrete skull. So that's a good thing to remember as we're rushing around through the holidays, as we're trying to do so many things, or all the painful things, the hurtful things, the whatever it is. It's infinitely full of variety, shall we say. This world is meant to test us. That's what it's about. No matter what, be even-minded and cheerful. and live in the presence of God.
I'm going to start by asking you a question. You don't have to answer it out loud. And the good news about, I'm going to ask you two questions actually. The good news about these is that there's no wrong answer. There's only your answer. But the first question is, if I start the phrase life is and allow you to fill in the blank after that, just take a moment and think, what is life to you? Life is, or life is, and you can think about that for a moment. The second question is, this world is, and again, fill in the blank. I'll tell you mine, and again, like I said, there's no right or wrong. It's not like mine are right and everybody else's is wrong or anything like that. Life is a quest for joy. That's the name of one of Swamiji's beautiful pieces that he wrote. And it's this hauntingly beautiful melody. Bum, 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 da, 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 da. And it's the story of the human condition. Life, and it's the story of the Festival of Light, really, you could say. Life is a quest for joy. This world is a school. And being a school, I'd like to remind us of something. And this came as a little bit of a revelation to me. This particular thought struck me this week. I don't know if this will surprise you as it did me or not. Maybe this is obvious to everybody but me. I don't know. It struck me today that even in a boarding school, I don't know how many of us here went to a boarding school. I did not. Probably not too many of us did. I think it used to be much more common than it is nowadays. But even in a boarding school, even where you set up, make your bed and have a study space, and you're going to be there, you're going to live there for however many months, there is this intuitive understanding. This is not my home. I don't live in my school. I certainly did not want to live in my school. My high school didn't even have windows. It was bizarre. You know, they designed, it was a new school. I mean, it was about 3 or 4 years old when I got there. And it was, hot potatoes design in the 70s. No windows, no daydreaming looking out the windows in that school. Boy, there weren't any. Well, there were so few in the hallways, but I mean, in the classrooms, 0, not 1. Anyway, but life is a school in order that we pass our lessons and move on. We don't think of sort of making a home there. I say that because this world is not our home. It is a school. We are here to learn. We are here to grow. We're here to do what one does in school. We're not here to get all hunkered in and think it's going to be forever. This topic, living in the presence of God, it's easy to think, and I think in the Christian tradition, there's been a lot of emphasis on this particular passage. You have done unto the least of these, my brethren, you have done unto me. And so there's a lot of charitable work, and it's all good. It's wonderful. Swami alluded to this as the lower altars of good works in the Festival of Light. But then he goes on to say the noble taper of inner communion burns low and is ill attended. And so it's like, let's, re-emphasize that part of it. But there's this piece of it where we can think, okay, let me go and find one of the least of these, my brethren, and let me quick serve him, find a homeless person, find somebody else. What struck me this week is that we live in the presence of God all the time. And we are the least of these, my brethren. We, all of us are. Whatever situation we're in, this is, Nirmala was telling the story about Swami with the the ambulance. I don't know that I was there that time. I was there other times when the ambulance came, and I remember him putting out that energy. But for him, it was just the most obvious thing to do because he lived by the maxim, be a cause, not an effect. And so often we just sort of think, oh, well, life just sloshed me over. Life just dislocated my hip or did whatever to me, broke my ankle, and I'm stuck in this hospital. And people could be moaning and groaning and moping and grumping. Or they could be, years ago I worked in Earth Song in the little natural foods health store and cafe that we had in Nevada City. And I managed the magazine section among many other things. And I remember, this was in the late 80s and early 90s. And I remember that there was a magazine that became popular at that time. I have no idea if it still exists anymore. But the magazine had this memorable title, or memorable name, Mothering Magazine. Now we typically think of mother, motherly. We don't think of the verb to mother, mothering. And, there's a whole magazine about it. And it was like taking care of, nurturing, those things. But think of, here we are in the season of Christmas. I've been listening to these incredible Christmas music. The Joy Singers came here some weeks ago and did a lovely concert, and it was beautiful, and it was Christmas music, and it sort of started to bring that flavor, bring that feeling. But I've listened to Renaissance Christmas music and ancient, Latin Christmas music, and it's always the Father giving us the Son, the Mother, Mary. It's like, what struck me is you don't get a mother or a father without a kid or without somebody to take care of. Now we have a master who didn't get married. Yogananda didn't marry in this lifetime. But the very last words of Autobiography of a Yogi, Lord, repeat after me, Lord, thou hast given this monk a large family. Well, we are those monks, even if we're family people. We can have family, but we often tend to sort of tunnel in on the family. And, it gets, as Nirmala said, the karmas can come out at this time of year. But think of the family of man. Think of the family of the world. That's what our Swami and our Master were always focused on. Whoever comes to me as a manifestation of God, doesn't matter whether they're low or high in this world. I read this very compelling story recently, and I'll preface it by giving the Italian little phrase that is sometimes associated with things like this. Se non è vero, è ben trovato. It means, even if it's not true, it's a really good story. or as I would prefer to say it, that's not a literal translation. It literally means, even if it's not true, it's well found, or it's well founded. I prefer to think of it as like in Hollywood, where it says at the beginning of the movie, it says based on a true story. And what they do is they'll gather up 4 or 5 actual people who had pieces of the experience, and then they'll create one character out of that. Well, it's a little bit what I think of in this case. So the story is of a man who played the oboe at a very high level. He played in one of the best orchestras in Paris. And this is just at the time of the Second World War. And he was very lucky in the sense that he was able to continue his job even in the occupation of France, because they wanted the music scene to flourish and be continuing at a high level. And so he was there, and he continued to play, and he played very beautifully. And there came one day where he just had this icky feeling that something might happen to him, because there had been concerns about the orchestra and just cross currents of disaster coming. And that particular day they played Scheherazade, and he had a solo in it. The oboe has an amazing solo in Scheherazade. And he nailed it. And at the end of the performance, all the applause died down, and sure enough, the Gestapo came for him and said, "We want you for questioning." He had his oboe. He wasn't going to let go of his oboe. He said, "You won't need that where you're going." Well, and they took him away. And for a year, he was not heard of. And the assumption was that was it. People were taken away. They were never heard from again. They were executed, whatever. Well, the city was liberated. The war was won. It was over. And it was time for a concert to celebrate. They had been having to play German composers all this time. Now they could finally play French ones in the orchestra. And who should show up but the oboist? And he came back, and he was very emaciated. He had been in a concentration camp. And it came time for that concert, and they wanted him to play. And he had tried playing the oboe, and he could play a little bit. He wasn't as good as he was before. But so it came time for the concert. And the house was full, and the orchestra came out. Everybody's dressed to the nines, all the tuxedos in black and white. And there was an empty chair in the middle of the orchestra. And there was this pause because the conductor was ready. And then out comes the oboist in bare feet and wearing the rags of the remains of the costume that the uniform he had had to wear when he was in the concentration camp. And everybody saw this, and the sort of shock went through the place. And everybody stood, of course, and applauded because they realized that he didn't just represent himself. He represented all the people that had disappeared and never came back. And he played. They was a standing ovation. And then he went on and played. And he had to stop once or twice because he was coughing. He had tuberculosis, which ended up killing him eventually. But at least for that day, he could bring hope and upliftment to people, and he had been at a very high level. He was famous in his way. I mean, he wasn't like a violinist solo, world famous, but he was, in that context, he was very famous. But in another sense, he was the least of these, my brethren. In that moment, he was dressed in his prison costume. And we, all of us, can be that to each other, can lift each other up, can open each other's hearts in ways that we can't imagine intellectually. We just have to offer ourselves into the moment and recognize that the school that we're in teaches hard lessons sometimes. And we have to have compassion. Sometimes we slip going down the stairs and break our ankle on a round piece of firewood. And we end up in the hospital in a bed for a week and we can't get out. And what are we going to do with ourselves? Just as Nirmala said, our choice is right now. How will I use my energy? How will I offer myself? How will I serve? That's what Swami was always asking. For him, it was always put energy into the situation, whatever it is. And we, all of us, can do that as well and just offer our heart to whoever it may be. We don't have to go rousting around hunting for the least of these, my brethren. We're staring at them all the time. And know that God's blessing flows through us, because we often sell ourselves short thinking, well, it couldn't be me, right? I mean, surely I couldn't be an instrument. Well, jolly well, yes. But only to the degree that we open ourselves to do so. And if we do open ourselves, and to the degree that we do, great, great blessings can come into this world.
To Mary there came an angel of light who announced
the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou, blessed art thou among women, blessed art thou.